Welcome back, everybody, to That's DPI. My name is Tyler. This is Zach. As we get started, we have a stadium update coming out of Missouri. It has been all but certain that the Chiefs are going to move to Kansas due to the lack of progress happening in the state of Missouri. However, Jefferson City has been on the move. They just approved a bill that would give the Chiefs and the Royals $1.5 billion. This would cover half of
Billion.
the cost. Billion dollars, $1.5 billion, which is an upgrade from only about 5 to 700 million that was previously done before Kansas passed their bond that would give 80% of the stadium. So I think that Kansas is still in the lead for getting the Chiefs, but this is progress for the Kansas City Chiefs staying in Missouri and or at Arrowhead, as $1.5 billion has been approved by Missouri state lawmakers. Zach, what do you think is happening here? What do you think the future looks like for the Chiefs and or the Royals?
Well, everyone loves a good rematch of Bleeding Kansas. And that's what we have here. We have a competition between these two states. Uh, Instead of over slavery, we're discussing who gets the most profitable sports organization in the country, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. They are on a tear right now, and having them in your state would be a huge advantage. And Missouri is finally recognizing that. It took them longer than I thought, if I'm being quite honest. They were dropping
The
the
governor had to
ball.
call a special session for this.
Oh yeah, I mean they were dropping the ball. The tax bill that they proposed to keep that initially started this controversy all the way back last year during election cycle that did not pass um, was very weak. It was not enough for the Chiefs to continue to make the improvements they need to make to what is now a multi-time Super Bowl winning team stadium. And the Royals wanted to move, and that they did not put up the money in that first bill. But now it seems like they're approaching the number that could allow both these teams to stay in Missouri. So I'm curious
And
what
what
the
you're referencing started was a vote by Jackson County citizens as to whether they want to continue a tax, not add a tax, but continue a tax to renovate the Chiefs Stadium and build a new downtown Royal Stadium. And that's what was rejected, prompting Kansas to say, "Hey, if you won't pay for it, we will." And now here we are with Missouri.
And I remember a lot of the discussion surrounding that continued tax wasn't really surrounding the Chiefs. I mean, there were a couple of renderings that were posted that we did cover in an earlier video if you want to check that one out. But a lot of the discussion was related to the Kansas City Royals and the site that their new downtown stadium would be. There was a lot of debate, and the site that was ultimately chosen was a very unpopular choice, and it led to basically a mass vote down of this tax continuance that started this whole thing. So if the Chiefs leave Arrowhead, you could technically blame it on the Royals for just being so disorganized about moving downtown. I mean, that's what it is. Public support completely fell apart as soon as they realized that that site was the one that was chosen. I don't remember which one specifically, Tyler, if you do, but I remember it being one of the more unpopular options that would dehome a lot of local businesses that are popular in the area.
And that's what it was. And you're speaking as a former Jackson County voter. You voted in that
I did
election
vote on this bill. I
for
was
them.
there at the polls and I did vote against it because I felt the proposal was not adequate, specifically due to the Royals proposal. And I'm sure a lot of voters
It
agree with me.
was it was near I think it's called the Arts District, near Broadway.
I remember there being a lot of proposals, so we would have to.
There's a specific like district that it's called. As I'm not a resident of Kansas City, I'm not fully aware of the mapping, but
I'm thinking
some
Crossroads,
people
but I don't
were.
know.
It might have been the Crossroads, but yeah, like you said, there have been a lot of proposals. I don't think the Royals were very diligent with what their plan would have been. It was just this idea of a new stadium, and from what it sounds like, the voters weren't happy about the Royals moving, and that's what ultimately caused this border war to come up. But
But
staying in the Kansas City area, We are talking today about our top general managers of the NFL right now. I say staying in the Kansas City area because my number one, we're looking at our top 5 today. My number one is Brett Veach of the Kansas City Chiefs. We are going to release our top 5 and then we'll get into some debates about them. But my number one is Brett Veach, followed by Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles.
And that's Roseman with an R,
Uh,
right, Tyler?
yes, I have. It has been pointed out to me that earlier in a video, I accidentally stumbled over that name and called him a different name. Uh, but nonetheless, as you are the number 2 GM in football, you get the name right. I have John Lynch of the San Francisco 49ers ranked at number 3. I already see the hatred in your eyes for me putting John Lynch
You can't do it.
above Brad Holmes. Your Lions GM gets my number 4 spot. And then my number 5 spot is Eric DeCosta of the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's done a great job in Baltimore. I know there's going to be some disagreement. Zach, what is your top 5?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and go in my top 5, and then we can kind of sort out our disagreements, which is what we're so good at doing. But my ranking goes like this. Number 1 is Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles. And then number 2 is Brett Veach. So a little bit of the old switcheroo there at the top. And then at
Mm-hmm.
number 3, no bias here at all. Brad Holmes is number 3. I can defend this with facts and logic, and I will try to today. But number 4, Eric DeCosta of the Ravens. And finally, at number 5, I have Nick Caserio of the Houston Texans. A little bit of a hot take there, as there's some other people would put Brian Gutchrist of the Packers there, or maybe the Bills GM there as well. But I would elevate um, the Texans GM to that 5 spot.
So we agree on who the top 2 are, just the order. Why? And I tried to remove my own potential bias here. Why is Howie Roseman over Brett Veach overall?
And it's really, really close. I mean, the last 5 years have been a total masterclass from both GMs. They both have a title. They both have multiple deep playoff runs. But the reality is, Brett Veach has a lot of his success to credit to Patrick Mahomes, when Howie Roseman has developed his team without really a star top 5 quarterback. I mean, you can't really argue that Jalen Hurts is top 5. And so I think that it's more
I think you can
impressive.
argue it.
Maybe, but you'd be wrong. The reality is, Howie Roseman made the Eagles into a historic powerhouse for at least 2024. They were really good last year as well, without a game-changing top 5 quarterback like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. And that's why he gets the nod over Veach. They've both assembled phenomenal defenses. The Philadelphia Eagles, of course, very topically defeating the Kansas City Chiefs with said phenomenal defense. But Brett Veach's Chiefs defense is no slouch either. Jones, Karlaftis, a lot of notable draft picks in the secondary to make up for huge losses like Matthew and Reed. The Chiefs have mostly weathered the storm. L'Jarius Sneed dishing him right before he regressed off a cliff. There's a lot of things that Veach did that I think are good, and that's why he's number 2. But the reality is, it's more impressive to do what Howie's done without a top 5 quarterback, and Veach has that. So unfortunately, he loses out on the 1
So
spot.
for me, I would at least put Hurts on the cusp of top 5. If we really break it down, maybe he ends up 6 or 7, but I think there's an argument that can be made for him being top 5. So to me, Roseman's success is not with a caveat. It's kind of the same thing with Veach and Mahomes. Is that's the guy you brought in, that's the guy bringing you success. He did a good job. My thing of why I put Veach over Roseman as a whole, like 2024, Roseman's getting Executive of the Year, well deserved. But overall, I still put Veach as better because Roseman is a builder of teams and Veach is a keeper of teams. When you look at Roseman, he's built really good teams. He built a Super Bowl 52 roster. He built a Super Bowl 57 NFC championship team, and he of course built a Super Bowl 59 championship roster. That was all Roseman. But I'm worried that he can't keep those teams. We've seen the Eagles lose a lot of key defensive players already this offseason. After Super Bowl 52, they lost a lot. They went downhill quick because he couldn't keep the teams. Brett Veach, maybe he hasn't built, because you're right, the success of Patrick Mahomes is really the home, it's the grand slam, and he's had a few other home runs with the draft prospects, but his biggest thing is being able to keep the teams. He is a salary cap guru. He has manipulated, we see it time after time, of the Chiefs being like 13, 20 million under the cap or over the cap, and then like all of a sudden 2 days later there's a couple restructures and the Chiefs are good. It's almost like they just turn the salary cap off. Brett Veach has manipulated that so well. And that's why there's a dynasty in Kansas City and not just a couple titles. And that's why I have Veach over Roseman, is because he can keep those teams.
So I think that doesn't necessarily separate the two. I would also classify Howie Roseman as a salary cap guru. He's a guy that pioneered a lot of these salary cap moves that Brett Veach is utilizing. Look at void years. The amount of void years that Howie Roseman puts on contracts and spreads money out and utilizes just ways to push money down the line when he knows that the salary cap is going to balloon over expectations. It's so incredibly intelligent, and it's not something that NFL GMs have really had a grasp on until Howie started doing it. Veach, I will admit, has been quick to jump on the train and has been one of the top guys. And I mean, so is Brad Holmes. So it seems like a common theme. If you know how to manipulate the salary cap, you instantly become one of these top guys. But in my opinion, you have two guys who can manipulate the salary cap really well, two guys who can build through the draft and free agency really well. What's the deciding factor? What can you differentiate the two of them? One of them has one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen, and the other one has Jalen Hurts. So Howie Roseman gets the nod at number one for me, just because they both do those things really well. There's not really one that is better at the salary cap than the other, in my opinion.
I respect that argument, and I can already feel the Eagles fans in our comment sections tearing me apart. So maybe let's move on before I dig myself a deeper grave amongst our Philadelphia viewers.
I mean, we have another obvious topic. I don't include John Lynch on my top five, and you have him ahead of Brad Holmes in the top three, one of the best executives in football. I kind of want to hear why you have him so high first.
So this is kind of going back to what I just said about Veach and Roseman, is it's not necessarily this last year or two, it's overall as a GM. So John Lynch has not been better than Holmes in 2024, but overall I do think he is a very good GM, because when you look at the 49ers, I'm almost crediting the 49ers success to John Lynch. You and I have talked about Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy as, are they good? Are they overrated? And I was on the Jimmy G hype train a lot longer than I should have. And in addition, you're one to admit that Brock Purdy is not an elite quarterback. So I'm giving credit to John Lynch for constantly having an elite defense on top of building the weapons. Maybe he knows what you know about, Brock Purdy's not that elite of a quarterback. So I need to build the weapons around him to make him look elite. And he's done that. On top of that as well, maybe but with him having the quarterback struggles, such as the absolute bust in Trey Lance, and again, the debate about Brock Purdy's success, the 49ers still are always still a threat. They didn't have a great season this past year, but it usually seems to be that injuries are the biggest key factor for why they're not good. The roster that John Lynch builds year after year is an elite roster, and I think he deserves credit for that.
And a lot of what you said makes sense. But when you look at the last 4 years, which is, once you get 5 years in the past, the NFL can change so much. And so I was really looking at what have these GMs done recently, because Howie Roseman has been the GM of the Eagles since 2010, but he really started coming into his own once he pioneered those salary cap maneuvers and really built a champion. Okay. And
Mhm.
so I want to look at the last 4 years of 49ers draft classes with you and just kind of talk about some of these players and talk about the generationally bad run that the 49ers are on drafting in the last 4 years. I'm not saying anything past that. I would say there's a lot of good picks. Fred Warner, Bosa, all of those
Mhm.
guys, those veterans, Kittle, are great selections that are prior to 2021. So we're going to go look at 2021 on and see if these players are still on the roster or are competitive at all in the NFL. So the 2021 draft class
Okay.
goes like this. 3rd overall pick, Trey Lance. No longer on the
Okay.
team. Aaron Banks, pick 48. No longer on the team. He's a Packer now. Trey Sermon, no longer on the team. He's a Colt. Ambry Thomas, defensive back. He's a Viking, no longer on the team. Jalen Moore, he was a productive backup tackle to Trent Williams, traded to the Chiefs. He's no longer on the team. Demondre Lenore, productive corner on the team. Taloa Hafunga, all-pro safety. And then Elijah Mitchell, no longer on the team. He is a Kansas City Chief now, but he was productive. So those last 3 picks were hits in 21. But the top 5, that's 2021. 2022, Drake Jackson for the Niners was selected as their 2nd round pick, their 62nd pick. They did not have a 1st round pick that year. Drake Jackson has 21 total tackles in his entire career. 2022 2nd round pick. 21 tackles. Tyrion Davis Price, running back, in the 3rd round selection. He has 127 career yards. Danny Gray, wide receiver. He has 10 career receiving yards. 3rd round pick 105. Spencer Burford, O lineman. He still is on the Niners. He is a contributing team. Samuel Womack, no longer on the team. Nick Zakaj. He is an offensive lineman. He is on the team. Kyla Davis, he still is on the team. Tyreek Castro Fields, he is not on the team. And then that final pick is, of course, Brock Purdy. Had he not made that pick, these next 2 drafts would have been really rough for the Niners, because in 23, they drafted Jake Moody in the 3rd round, who was amazing in his rookie season, but kicked 70% clip in his 2nd year and likely won't be the team starting kicker next year. And then the rest of these guys, aside from Jair Brown, who was productive as their 3rd round pick, the rest of these guys I wouldn't even classify as contributors. Ronnie Bell's a Lion now. Braden Willis is a tight end who doesn't play. The rest of these guys haven't played too many games. And of course, 2024, it's too early to judge. No, it's not. Ricky Pearsall goes on to not play very much. He did get shot. That was extremely unlucky, but he ended up being not a contributor when they desperately needed one. And then Bernardo Green, Dominic Pooney, Malik Mustafa, Isaac Garendo. None of these guys broke out last year. And so when you look at that
So
drafting, I just don't think that you can justify a top 3 selection. He's been generationally bad. He has not picked any producers besides Brock Purdy and Hafunga, in my opinion, and maybe Lenore.
so let me ask you this then, because you mentioned the last 4 years. 2024, 49ers did not qualify for the playoffs. 2023, they're in the Super Bowl and take the Dynasty Chiefs to overtime. 2022, they're in the NFC Championship. 2021, they're in the NFC Championship. Those quarterbacks for both those years is Jimmy Garoppolo, who fooled some people into making them think that they were elite. I wonder who would do that. Um, but so if John Lynch is not the reason for the success around a non-elite Brock Purdy and a non-elite Jimmy Garoppolo, who is?
Kyle
Who's the reason
Shanahan.
for those?
Kyle Shanahan. He's got the
But
He's got the
But is Kyle
greatest
Shanahan
offensive
also the
scheme.
reason that they didn't win?
He it can be two sides of the same coin. Justin Herbert's a great regular season quarterback, but he's also the reason they've lost a couple of their playoff games. Kyle Shanahan has devised an incredible scheme, and it absolutely stands to benefit the San Francisco 49ers. And the wrinkles that they put in have teams completely lost. Look at my Lions in the second half of the NFC Championship game. Completely lost. But the reason why he doesn't have a championship when I think he's the best offensive coach in football is because his game management skills are poor. They're bad.
Do you think he could? So you think that Kyle Shanahan's developing these great athletes, but just isn't managing the game very well? That John Lynch is just kind of putting in this ragtag team. Kyle Shanahan is making them multi Pro Bowl athletes.
I think it's more Kyle Shanahan knows how to use what he is given. It's not necessarily that he's taking an underdeveloped player and making them great. You can argue that, but I just personally don't think it's that. I think that his scheme is extremely easy to pick up on, and it benefits players on the offensive side of the ball, even when they may not be the most skilled, i.e. Brock Purdy. You put Brock Purdy in any other scheme, and he's Sam Darnold. Okay. And I don't
I don't fully disagree with you on that.
and so I think that a lot of the success needs to go to what has been an incredible coaching staff in San Francisco that persisted despite horrific draft picks. You cannot sustain success in the NFL if you have draft picks like that. I mean, if you just compare that draft class that we just went over to the ones that Brad Holmes has put together, you'll see what I mean. His
That's fair.
2020,
And
yeah.
I was gonna say, and the reason that I have Brad Holmes at 4 behind John Lynch isn't anything that Brad Holmes has been doing wrong. To me, it's just that he's not been in long enough for me to tell, did he draft 3 great years and that's all he's got? Or is he a good GM? Because the Detroit Lions are a very young team outside of their quarterback. They're a very young team. They've got 7 players in the top 25 under 25 years of age. That's insane. So I want to see if Brad Holmes can consistently re-sign those guys and keep those all-stars together, then he shoots up on my list. So it's just it's too soon for me to rank him at top 3. That's the only reason that I bumped him
And
down.
that's fair. And I think that's something that Brad Holmes has already done. He's locked up Aleem McNeil. He's re-signed his franchise quarterback that he traded for in Jared Goff. He re-signed Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's getting ahead of the curve on these guys, which I think we could touch on this later, is something that NFL GMs often struggle with. There's a couple that come to mind right now that I know are very jealous of the job that Brad Holmes has done in re-signing his stars before their price gets too high.
I'll be
And
honest, I kind
so,
of forgot about the re-signing of Amon-Ra St. Brown already, and you're right. He did get ahead of the curve. He knew the wide receiver market was coming. All right, you've convinced me. I'll put Holmes at 3, but I'm going to stick John Lynch at 4 still.
you know what? That's a victory. I think that you can make the argument for Lynch at 4 solely because of how well he drafted before this 4-year stretch that has been miserable. And I do
Mhm.
think that his trades and free agency acquisitions have been okay. Javon Hargrave, defensive tackle, and trading for CMC, that was huge. It jump-started them, and CMC has played really well when healthy for them. They got a really good year out of him a couple of years ago. But I'm not comfortable putting him in the top 5 if he has 4 straight years of horrific drafts. But I am
That's
comfortable
fair.
moving Brad Holmes up a bit if he has 3 of the greatest drafts in Lions history in a row. That's really tough to do.
That's fair. And honestly, kind of thinking back now, Brad Holmes was the guy that made the trade for Jared Goff. That's panned out incredibly well. Jared Goff had kind of ran his course in LA. He kind of revitalized his career in Detroit, and
And
it paid off well for him.
from the picks they got from that, they got so many contributors that remain on the team and remain Pro Bowl caliber players every year. Like Jamison
Yeah.
Williams is one that comes to mind. Um,
hmm And then the only guy that I didn't have on my list that you had Nick Passario. Am I saying
uh,
that right?
yeah, Casario. I
So
just think
Nick
that
Passario. For me, I just had Lynch in there.
I think the Texans have just been really good at all three fronts. When you look at salary cap management, um, obviously this hasn't really come up yet because they still have a quarterback on a rookie contract.
Hmm.
So that one's kind of a wait and see. That's why he doesn't climb up this list. But drafting, they have done nothing but draft amazing players. Stroud, um, Will Anderson, that trade up was absurdly risky and it has paid off
Oh
tenfold.
man.
Oh my goodness, I remember watching that live, and I cannot remember his name right now, but that corner that they drafted, Stingley, Derek Stingley, Tank Dell, Henry To'oto,
Hmm.
all of these guys were drafted recently by the Texans. Kamari Lassiter, it just hit after hit after hit after hit. It's the exact opposite of reading the draftees from every 49ers draft class. Hit after hit after hit, tons of producers. They hit in the first round. They make sure that they're um, taking advantage of the cheap contracts that draft picks can give you. And I think the free agent signings of Houston have been great. Look at the addition of Joe Mixon to that offense.
Hmm.
Adding a veteran running back, and he comes in and plays lights out. Mixon was one of the best backs in football last year. I think that's a great signing. Running backs were undervalued, and the Texans were one of the teams to jump on that opportunity. And so I just think that he's managed his team well in the last 3 or 4 years, and he's put them in a place to succeed with C.J. Stroud still in his rookie deal.
Yeah, I agree. And I think how they sign CJ Stroud to a long-term contract is going to really be kind of a make or break for him as well. But you and I both have I want to get your thoughts on this as well. We both have the GM for the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's personally a very underrated GM. But neither of us have the GM for the reigning MVP, and that is the Buffalo Bills GM. Why did he not make our list?
I think
That is,
that
that is Brandon Bean.
Brandon Bean has done a great job. And I think that he's like sixth on my list, truly, honestly, because of the way that Josh Allen has been able to develop. They've always kept a fairly solid offensive line to keep Josh Allen healthy, because that was one of the concerns when you have a big, bruising running quarterback. You got to keep him protected. Allen consistently has a lot of time in the pocket. And he's had a lot of weapons, but they've kind of rotated. They can't quite keep weapons in, in Buffalo. The departure of Diggs, um, you know, and among other guys and running
For
backs
me,
and such.
it's his defense. Brandon Bean has not been able to construct a good defense, and that's, in my opinion, the reason Buffalo has failed to make a Super Bowl at all during these last 4 or 5 years. I think he's dropped the ball on that a lot, and that's why he's not in my top five.
Yeah,
But
it's
the Ravens GM has done the opposite. He's got an MVP caliber quarterback, and he's been building a great defense consistently year after year.
I agree. I think that the Ravens are in a better place in terms of going to the Super Bowl and competing with Kansas, because it's really, can you beat Kansas City in the AFC Championship?
Yeah.
And I think the Ravens are in a better place to do that, in my opinion.
Mm.
Lamar Jackson is finally proving he can win in the playoffs. He did that this past season. And unfortunately, Zay Flowers fumbled right at the goal line. Um,
Wow.
that's
Gives me
not the GM's
chills.
fault. It was a fairly incredible moment, and I think that the weapons around Lamar are better than the weapons around uh, Josh Allen. Arguable, but Derrick Henry rushing for 1,900 yards and Zay Flowers having a breakout campaign, the wide receiver out of Boston College, along with having two of the best tight ends in football with Mark Andrews and um, Isaiah Likely, and they run a lot of two
Hmm.
tight end sets. It's great. It's an awesome play. And Rashad Bateman just got signed to an extension. That's another great deal from the Ravens GM. Super underrated. I agree with you, and I think he's done a better job keeping the team around and keeping Lamar Jackson uh, with a team around him that can contend.
Yeah, and you mentioning Mark Andrews also. If it's not for Mark Andrews dropping that pass, they are the ones to face Kansas City in the AFC Championship. But as you said, that's not the GM's fault.
Yeah, no, they've done a great job. I think the Ravens under this current GM will get a Super Bowl. I think Lamar Jackson's too dang talented. It's just a matter of when, because he does
Mm-hmm.
such a good job. And I do think that Brandon Bean will put the Bills in a position to at least appear in a Super Bowl
Mm-hmm.
as well at some point. It's just right now the Chiefs are too dang dominant. They're going to have to wait for some salary cap concerns or the retirement of Kelsey and Jones, because the Chiefs right
Mm.
now, I think, are still better composed roster wise than Bills and Ravens. But moving on to a team that is also has a great offense, but has not developed the defense in the way that the Ravens GM has, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to do one little bit of an extension of our NFL overreaction segment. So, Tyler, I want to get your thoughts on this. Is the GM of the Cincinnati Bengals, Duke Tobin, a bottom 5 NFL GM?
Bottom five, absolutely. And honestly, I'm gonna give you a hot take, Zach. I think he is the worst GM in football right now.
Really?
The management of the salary cap has been horrible. The contracts that he gave Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase is horrible. It sets them up for failure long term. And what they're doing to their already atrocious defense needs to be criminalized. And I love it as a Chiefs fan. With what's going on with Trey Henderson and now Shamar Stewart, you've got a rookie holding out over some technicalities in a contract. Let me go. Not holding out. You've got a rookie trying to get on the
Threatening to go
field.
back. Yeah.
He showed up to mandatory mini camps without being signed to a contract, and just nothing got done because of a couple things in a contract. And he goes like, I'm going home. Like, this isn't being done. It's atrocious management, and I love it. I love the downfall of the Cincinnati Bengals, but it this is a historically bad moment for the Cincinnati Bengals GM right now. I think he is the worst GM in football right now. Not in history though, not necessarily overall, but right now he is the worst GM in football.
Yeah. I don't know if I can go that far, but juxtaposing Tobin's mismanagement of the contract situation in Cincinnati, it rivals Jerry Jones. And you don't want to be rivaling Jerry Jones in paying your stars, because Jerry has been notorious for overpaying star players and sending his team into downward spirals. Um, but you cannot go to like some head coaches meeting or some NFL executives meeting and say, "Oh yeah, we're going to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in football," and just say things like that when Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons extensions are around the corner and they're going to get paid mega deals. And so if you just say those little erroneous comments, they're going to come back to bite you, because you're going to have to be taken to the bank at that point. Because then a week after that comment, Myles Garrett signs a ridiculous contract that now they have to match because of that silly comment. Keep your mouth shut. And so now they're in a really tough spot with Trey Hendrickson. I don't think they're going to be able to retain him. Um,
I don't
and
think so either.
and Shamar Stewart, his prophetic replacement, isn't going to come, may not come back to the team either. It's horrific mismanagement. It's the opposite of what Veach and Roseman and Holmes have done in their respective teams. They have not paid their players early. They have paid their players late in the process, overpaying them in the process. And he hasn't necessarily drafted particularly well outside of, taking a slam dunk easy selection in Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Um, I just think that
Joe Burrow is a great. Sorry, go ahead. Finish
no, go ahead.
that.
I don't have any thoughts.
That Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. If you want to pay Joe Burrow, cool. If you want to make him the highest paid player in the NFL, I wouldn't, but all right. Jamar Chase, I think he's one of the best non-quarterbacks in the NFL, so it makes sense to maybe pay him now. To maybe pay him that. However, T. Higgins has a wide receiver two has a 4-year, $115 million contract, including almost $41 million guaranteed, giving him an annual salary of over $28.5 million for a wide receiver two. That's the icing on the cake for the Bengals' atrocity at contract. Tyreek Hill was the best tight end in football at the time. We wanted to make him top 5. Hill wanted to be number 1. We said no, we traded him, and we did amazing things with those picks. The Bengals just gave the guys the money.
Yeah, part of the reason why the GMs that we've already talked about are high on this list are so good is because they know when to move on from players.
Mm-hmm.
People were freaking out, Tyler, when Brad Holmes let Jamal Williams go. Season record, beat Barry Sanders' season record for rushing touchdowns in a season. People were losing their minds. He was a culture fit. Everyone loved him. And on top of that, they then traded away DeAndre Swift. What? And somehow they came out of it with a better backfield than they ever would have had with Gibbs and Montgomery. Probably the best backfield in football. I wouldn't say probably. I'm saying it is. Nobody touches that. And it's only because they knew when to move on from a player like Williams who was asking for too much and a player like Swift who would have costed too much.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like I said, the same thing with Tyreek Hill. People were saying Tyreek Hill made Mahomes who he was and just made Kelsey favorable, and that the Chiefs dynasty, it wasn't a dynasty, that the Chiefs would not be able to win a second Super Bowl without him. Since getting rid of Tyreek Hill, the Kansas City Chiefs have yet to not make the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
They're
no.
3-0 in
It
AFC
is.
Championship since departing from Tyreek Hill and not paying him that absurd amount of money.
Meanwhile, the Miami Dolphins haven't won a playoff game since the early 2000s.
Yes.
So, and the Bengals are guilty of many sins, but when, as a management, you put yourself in a position where you have 3 massive contracts, Burrow, Chase, and either Higgins or Hendrickson, it's I don't think that any GM can succeed in that spot when you have so much money tied up, much less a guy who
Mm-hmm.
put himself in that spot in the first place. It's brutal. However, I don't think that he's the worst. I think he is easily bottom 5, because I don't think any other GM would have handled it this poorly.
That's fair.
But I think that's all we have for you guys
Mm-hmm.
this episode. We're super grateful for all the support you guys have been showing during this dead time in the NFL. There's not a whole lot to talk about. So once again, we appreciate it. Tune in next week. We're so happy to have you guys watching.
Appreciate you guys.